is.
Yeah, it worked. Okay. So then.
I'll need to.
Oh, okay, I see. Yeah.
This is how I did it last time. I had to do this.
So I'll have to do my person's presentation on my computer.
Even though we're right.
Maybe
Chat, see if it's. Okay, are we transcribing? Doesn't seem like it. Maybe I didn't yes, see that actually. Oh, there we go. Okay, awesome.
Nope, there it is.
Okay,
There's
cool.
all of our talking.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's squeezing it on.
And then I don't know, like, if you stand here, Jillian, they don't like you.
So did you-
Would it take K8 down?
Did you switch like your camera and your mic to be using a phone?
Oh,
Yeah, I don't think so.
I didn't do that, Nate.
Okay. It's all right.
Okay, I've stopped sharing.
Yep, so here, all we gotta do.
Oh, there's me.
Okay. Let me go grab a clicker,
Yeah.
because I think if you stand here, they can actually see you presenting.
Oh my goodness. We got that.
Salad burger, coffee, sorry.
iPhone charger. Oh, I do not with me. I do in my office upstairs. Thank you. I think it's locked, and I just let you go wander.
Yeah, that's. Oh, that's been great. She knows, she's a great singer. She found that at 6 in the morning, I'd be setting up that salad bar and then she would be happy.
Why is it being? Sorry, it's being strange.
It's so funny. She's not only. She got a picture in my life. I don't even know who she is. This was. Maybe it was at her house. No, I would set up that salad bar at 6 in the morning. And she would be there with me. She would let me in spirit. That's everything. I said, it's right. And it's been for 5 seconds. She's not. Well, I should be. It's so. It's like, we would talk, we were like, I want to know this. Have you seen this one?
Is this same with the?
Yeah.
Rest.
There, I mean, it's a great action.
Okay.
So he would use support for that. I'm not kicking you out. but-
Okay, I feel like it's a good job.
You make it very complicated.
Yeah. See, this is something we did during the presentation. I know there's a, I know there's a presentation that we did. I don't think it's on there yet. I don't know if there's something that
Where's,
training with like president, you're supposed to do this. But
They already had, they had to set up possibly, whatever they had to do it. And it's probably.
should shift the slides a little bit.
That sounds good. So, it's just there.
Break it.
I think so.
I feel like I had the camera on a minute ago.
Yeah. I'm trying to switch. Like her camera. The camera's on this one. I'm trying to switch it, but it's not even like.
It doesn't come up as a, so,
Do I need to?
oh, here,
Yeah.
devices,
Oh,
settings, and, it's new.
I was here.
It's the new one in it. Go back to the integrated camera. It shows integrated
Oh,
camera.
okay. Yeah, the only option is showing is getting the camera.
See. It's plugged in. Good. Did you try resetting the USB? Yeah, just try resetting it.
Oh, it wasn't in all the way.
There
It
we
wasn't
go.
plugged in all the way. That's the problem. Thanks so. Is it real? Usually be.
This was.
We want to try this, I don't know, or we just wanna.
Buggy, we're gonna miss something like that.
I think. All right, I'm gonna go check.
You did, you have some.
No, I guess you.
That is.
Oh. There was a picture of accounts. There's always wasn't a something thing.
Do you want?
They.
Far.
It's not.
Well, that,
Yes.
This sounds.
Like free. They're kind of.
Let's, I think it's because maybe it's already in full screen.
I guess the word now. You could like your shit. You just don't.
Are you ready? Okay, everybody. Hi, so to see so many faces. I thought the panel this morning was great. I was inspired. Hope you were too. I'm excited to introduce, who you probably know, Jillian Phillips, who's our Associate Director in Residence Life, and her presentation on sticking points. This is a topic of much interest to me. I've done some reading and I've had a presentation by one of your colleagues. So you're in for a treat because we have many generations that we're working with. And we need as much help as we can to navigate that. And so look forward to your presentation and expertise and turn it over to you.
All right. Thank you everyone for being here this morning. Thank you for working with us as we went through all the tech problems. When you're the first person to go, you have to be the guinea pig that figures out how all the technology works. So thank you for sitting and patiently waiting for us. My name is Jillian Phillips. I'm the Associate Director of Residence Life. If you have worked with Jim Maskill, who also works in Housing and Residence Life, she and I have done this presentation a few different times. We read this book called Sticking Points last summer, and we're like, oh, things make sense now that did not make sense before. If you work in student affairs, a lot of times you're like, these students, they're aliens, I don't understand them. Sometimes you may be thinking, my colleagues are aliens and I don't understand them. Like we see things very differently. And so this book is called Sticking Points. It's by Hayden Shaw. He has a lot of YouTube videos, if that's more your style. If you wanted to watch videos or have something going on your computer while you're at work. Really cool things he has to say. But the book is Sticking Points, How to Get 5 Generations Working Together, and the 12 Places They Fall Apart. We're not going to go through all 12. We're going to go through 3 for the sake of time. But I highly recommend the book. It's an easy read. It's a really quick read. So if you're looking for some light reading, I highly recommend it. But the book itself explains how people from different generations think and act the way they do. Why does this matter? When we understand the why, we can work with people to get outstanding results as teams or individuals. So again, it's like, I need to understand, clearly we are different. Clearly we see things differently, but why? And we always say, if you can start with the why, if you can understand the why, you can kind of build from there. Understanding the why enables leaders to celebrate differences and capitalize on the creativity and innovation of each generation. So the stuff we're going to talk about today can be applied to working with students, but a lot of times it's just working with your colleagues in your office or your department or your team. All right. So a little bit about me. Just wanted to go out there, introduce myself. Again, I'm Jillian Phillips, she, her, hers. So my identities, I'm a Kentuckian, if you can't already tell from my accent. Appalachian, I'm a millennial, which is relevant to this conversation. First gen. I'm the Associate Director of Residence Life. I've only been at Ohio University for 2 years, starting next month. But I've been working in student affairs full-time for the last 14 years. I want to do a quick, who do we have in the room? We don't have to necessarily do names and introductions, but what offices or teams do we have?
Hello, Elsa.
Hello, housing,
Diversity and inclusion.
diversity and inclusion, over team of students,
Counseling and psychological services.
psychology services,
Culinary services.
health promotion, I heard another one, culinary. Okay, sure there's no more in here. Okay, so again, why is this relevant? Why are we talking about different generations? There's tons of articles, there's lots of books out there. But it's the first time in history that this many generations are in the same workplace. So they say right now, up to 5 or 6 generations can be working in the same department or university at the same time. That's a lot of differences. There's a lot of viewpoints. It's a lot of historical baggage and knowledge too that people bring to work every single day. The focus on what escalates tension. Focus on why pulls us together. So celebrating or focusing on the differences that we have, those nitty gritty pieces. That's what drives people apart. We are different. But if we start talking about why and understanding why, it actually starts bringing people together. Knowing the sticking points allows teams to label and work through issues. They say the first step is acknowledging the problem, realizing there's a problem there. And then we're going to talk a little bit about using these 5 steps to cross-generational leadership empowers employees. So we'll talk. So there's typically 4 approaches to these generational differences. We can just ignore it. I'm just going to ignore the fact that you and I see things very differently. It's just a giant elephant in the room that we're acting like we're not seeing.
I'm sorry. They can't see the PowerPoint on mine.
Oh,
So
how do we do that? Oh, didn't they not share me?
I'm thinking when we did all that business.
Shared.
Okay.
Sorry. It's not showing an option.
If you go back to your PowerPoint, can you present in Teams? Hang on. We're back in business.
All right, and I want to use, so I don't know.
If
I think they can still hear.
Okay.
Me. I can hear them. I can see now. Yay. All right.
thanks for that.
Back in business. All right, so as I was saying, there's 4 approaches to differences. I think we can just ignore that there's not even one there. We can just try to fix it, and it's like my way or the highway, fix this problem. You know, you can cut the people out, or you can choose to lead through these differences. These generations, they impact organizations different ways. Again, why is this relevant? Why is this conversation happening? So there's these sticking points. You have to manage and motivate different groups of people. If you are a leader or director, there's lots of different generations under you. And so they all have different priorities, different ways of seeing things, different things that motivate them. And so you're like, how do I figure this out? Talk about students and stuff like that. They're all different. So baby boomers. A lot of us, there's still baby boomers still employed. They're leaving though. So then we have to replace those positions. So you're losing institutional knowledge, but you're also competing for new employees as well. So we talk about succession planning, leadership development, the market shifting, and there's 5 generations of customers. So as you know, if we're working with students, I'm also working with their parents, maybe their grandparents. Lots of other people are invested. They all have different views on what they're bringing to the table.
The slides are not moving for our team's friends.
Seriously?
I mean.
How are they not moving?
I don't know. Anybody?
Would you like me to go hunt down pages?
Yes, please. Yeah, I can move them on my screen. So I think they want them.
I mean, okay. Okay, people they can move them on their own. I'm gonna just direct them, so.
Okay.
Sorry. Proceed.
As Lee said, there are 5 generations at work right now. Might not be 5 generations in your apartment. There may be 5 generations at the university. I'm sure of it. But these are the ones we're looking at. These people who, the pre-1945, the greatest generation. We have the baby boomers, the Gen X or the lost generation, millennials, Gen Y. I'm the millennial, Gen Z, which is who our students are, and then this new generation that has now come up. And so they're talking about, I'm sure as you can imagine, this generation is impacted by the pandemic, impacted by COVID-19, and things like that. So they're still the unknown. They're still being born. So we won't have all this analysis of them just yet. So these are some of the sticking points. These are all 12 that the book talks about. Take a look at these. You may identify at least one of these that you're like, yeah, this sometimes is an issue on my team or in my department. We're going to talk about 3 of them, but you can see how different people, different generations approach things differently. Fun. When can you have fun at work? How do you have fun at work? When is fun appropriate? Different things like that. There's different attitudes, knowledge transfer, respect. What does respect mean at work? Who brings it? Who deserves it? How do you show it? Work ethic, loyalty, dress code is a hot topic that we talk about in my department often. And so it's different attitudes, but who's right? And so that often becomes the sticking point. Well, whose opinion matters the most? Is it the person at the top? Is it the person who has the best answer? Is it the person who has the most influence? Things like that. So there's all these different sticking points or where we kind of collide. And the book talks about sticking points, instead of being the repellent, and being the rub, and this is where teams break down, it can be the glue. And knowing what they are isn't the same as knowing what to do about it. So you can acknowledge a problem, but you need to know what to do about it. It's not necessarily the same. Anybody want to volunteer generational difference they may see in their chamber department? So, all right, dress code is one of ours. What about meetings? People have different attitudes about meetings.
Sometimes people are on technology in ways that to me feel distracting in meetings, and or I question their ability to actually focus on, because I know I can't, like with a device at a time.
Multitasking, meetings, what you do, how long a meeting should be. Should it be in person? What can you do during a meeting? Lots of different attitudes. I've seen some head nods. Anything else?
From teams, we have technology in general.
Yes, for sure. So like I said, we picked 3. Originally I was going to do 5. I was like, for time, we're going to stick it to 3. But I highly recommend checking out the book. Each one of these sticking points is like maybe 3 or 4 pages, but it's so enlightening. So if you want to learn more about it, we're going to talk about feedback, meetings, and work ethic. Feedback, some of the snippets from the book. Employees are 3 times more engaged if given regular feedback. So that's what makes it worth it. You want to have engaged employees. Everyone should work on giving better, shorter, and more frequent feedback. Employees need feedback to do their job well. Employers need feedback to attract and retain employees. I love that quote. So we have 5 generations. They all think about feedback different, which is really tricky if you're a supervisor. Or if you're leading a big team and you've got all these different people, do I cater? Do I do something different for every single group? But I bring this in there, traditionalists, no news is good news. So these are the 1945ers. Traditionalists, no news is good news. Don't bother me with bringing in, like, let's have a meeting and I want to give you a little tip that might help you do this better. They're like, I'm already doing fine. Like, don't waste my time, slow and steady. And I'm going to say all these things knowing that this is a broad stroke and individuals are individuals. Baby boomers, they want formal feedback because it keeps it fair and consistent. This is my way to get ahead. So I need to know where I stand so I know where I'm at in this competition and I can prove myself.
Yes, sorry.
So I keep talking.
Go ahead.
Gen X are my 1980s babies. Real-time feedback, so mistakes can be corrected as they happen. Don't let me stack up 10 different things that I've done wrong and then tell me right now. Because they're about efficiency, and it's not efficient if you're holding on to things for a long time. I need to know how I'm doing. If I've screwed up, tell me so I can fix it. I can keep this train rolling. Millennial, I'm a millennial. We like positive reinforcement and acknowledgement. I need to know when I'm doing a good job. I need to know when I'm contributing. I need that real-time feedback too, because I want to excel. I always want to be the A+ student. I can't be the A+ student if I'm not getting regular grades, and you're not telling me what I'm doing, and you're not coaching me. And then Gen Z, I've been trying to include more information on Gen Z because those are like our mystery students that we're constantly trying to understand. So feedback is a source of anxiety and stress. You may supervise a Gen Z and it's time for evaluations and they're wigging out. And you're like, why are you so nervous? Like you haven't done anything that would make you nervous. But they're shaking in their boots and I'm like, you're doing fine. But it's really stress inducing. They want kind and supportive feedback. They want to be coached. They want to feel like their supervisor is on their team and this feedback is coming from a good place. And they say, and I read an article yesterday that Gen Z is more likely to leave an organization if they don't get regular feedback. If they don't feel like they're being coached and growing, they're more likely to job search and leave that. So we may say, I only need to do evaluations like twice a year. They're the ones that need that ongoing more often.
I took one from our friend Allie. Yeah. I would note that as a millennial, I like feedback, but not for feedback for the sake of feedback, especially when it can overshadow the positive.
It's true. Seeds and headlines.
Then I was gonna ask, it says create positive reinforcement. What about when there's a corrective or
I would say that's okay, but it needs to be couched.
that goes against every Generation X feeling I have? Okay. You think we're good?
Yeah, they can see the part.
Thanks, Nate.
So it's like, we're not, as a millennial, I'm not against like corrective action or telling me that I've screwed up. But I don't want to be constantly called to the office to tell me I've screwed up. Like, I just want to hear the good things too. Because we want to be A+ students and we don't want to feel like we're failing our job.
It's just man, we do that.
All right, meetings. Everyone thinks the other generation makes meetings last longer than necessary. So that may be I have an opinion of the older generation where they want to have a meeting just to have a meeting. The older generation may think the younger ones make the meetings last longer because they can't focus. So everyone thinks everyone else makes meetings a problem. In student affairs, working at university, we are meeting happy. We have meetings all the time. Everyone has an opinion on what should be shared or covered. You know, some are like, I love a meeting because I love the updates. I love to hear what everybody else is doing. And then the other hand's like, I don't care what everybody else is doing. That's a waste of my time. Send it in an email. I think the biggest rub is what people do during a meeting. So are they chit-chatting? Are they on their computer? Are they multitasking? Are they texting? Are they not paying attention? You know, are they asking unnecessary questions? Are they making it drag out longer? That is the rub across generations. So here's some attitudes towards meetings. Traditionalists, they love collaboration. A meeting is a time where we're bringing everybody together. We can collaborate. We love this face-to-face interaction. This is how I build bonds. This is how I get to know people, is being in a meeting. And if I'm not paying attention to the speaker, I'm being disrespectful. So they're the ones that have the phone turned face down. I don't have my computer going. I pay attention. You've got my undivided. Baby boomers. So they're like, I like meetings because they give me information, they give me access.
Again, they're about that team bond. They have different attitudes about working from home. I am more productive at work. This is where the work happens. This is where I collaborate. This is where I learn from peers. Gen X, again, my 1980s babies. Meetings should be productive. If they're not productive, they should not be happening. Period. There's supplemental to email. I'm not anti-meeting, but you better be telling me something that I couldn't just read on my own. And they're happy to meet if meeting is the best option. And so they are all about efficiency. So if a meeting is the best way to get the job done, great. If it's not, let's not do it. The millennial in me, I hate to be bored. Dislike boring meetings, on and on and on. I like small groups. And I'm going to multitask. I can't help it, especially if I'm bored in a meeting. This is a way for me to stay engaged. I'm going to check my email because I'm thinking about other stuff. So we're the ones that are like always thinking about two things at once. So multitasking is a way to engage and connect. It also talks about millennials are known for having side conversations. And it's another way for them to stay engaged and stay focused. So Gen Z, they're also our multitaskers. A lot of times the book refers to like Gen Z or millennials times 10. So all of our habits just multiply them. So Gen Z, they're multitaskers in a meeting. They prefer to work independently because it's faster. I don't want to work in groups. I don't want to be in a meeting. I can get this done on my own, way faster, way more efficient, and then I have my own time to do whatever I want. So I don't want anybody to slow me down. Again, they want efficiency, and they're also okay with virtual meetings. It doesn't matter to me. You know, they're like, as long as we get the job done, if I need to Zoom or Teams with you for 10 minutes, great. I don't care if we do in person. I don't need that. And again, I want to make sure these are all broad strokes. Probably work ethic. I think about work ethic because this is attitudes towards work, how much work should be done, where the work should happen, what is work, what does work count. We talk about this 40-hour work week, and there's lots of attitudes in student affairs. It's like, what is a 40-hour work week? We always do more or less and things like that. So it's complicated. So there's a lot of sticking points over when and where and how much. Attitudes toward remote work, working from home, especially the pandemic threw us for a loop. The book recommends that you focus on results over constraints when it comes to attitudes of when and where and how much. And these newer generations, so the millennials and the Gen Zers, they expect options and flexibility. Those are the deal breakers for them. I need to have flexibility. I'm going to get the job done, but I need to have some flexibility on how it gets done, where it gets done. All right, so here's some other attitudes. So traditionalists are the World War II ones who, anti-sick day. I'm going to go to work even if it kills me. I'm going to be confident alone. I'm dedicated to the job, dedicated to the team. I'm here, I'm dependable, and my hard work will pay off. Coming to work sick means that I'm not going to let anybody down, and then I'm dedicated. And other ones will be like, why are you coming to work sick? You need to go home. You're not showing anything to anybody. So it's different attitudes towards that. Baby boomers, it talks about they are the workaholics. So how they grew up, baby boomers, we talk about the boom because there were so many of them. So life was competitive. There were so many of them competing for the same jobs. So this is my way to get ahead. So they have this workaholic attitude. Work is at the center of their lives. And it's worth the sacrifice for success. So it's worth sacrificing maybe my spare time or my evening or something like that because I'm dedicated. This is going to make me successful. This is going to make other people recognize me. Gen X, they're what they like these latchkey kids. So both the parents worked, and they saw this is impacting divorce rates and things like that. I'm raising myself. So that in turn gave them different attitudes to this work-life balance. In my personal life, As opposed to my parents, my personal life is more important than my professional life. They're most impressed with competence and efficiency to get the job done and anything extra. Millennials, for us, work should be fun. I want to have a good time while I'm at work. It doesn't always have to be parties, but if like work is boring or not fun or not energizing, I'm gonna go find it somewhere else. We're determined. Millennials are often called the overachievers. We want to be the A+ students. We want to know what the rules are. And we need to know what the rules are so that we can ace the game. We are always thinking about the end goal. We like change and we like challenge. We want to feel like there's growth. Gen Z, I love this, not motivated by money. Because they're thinking my time and my experience is worth more than what you're going to pay me. So think about a lot of those pieces better. So we want to say, yeah, I need you to do this extra work, but you're going to get more money for it. Like, no, I'll take it. I'm not impressed. They need flexibility and creativity in the workplace. Again, we talked about that flexibility. I'll get the job done, but I want to have some autonomy now and later. They prefer to work independently because others, they've been scarred by group projects for way too long. And they're thinking, I'm more efficient and I'm not held back by anybody else. Okay, so we talked about a few different examples of how there's differences. I saw some head nods and people are like, yeah, I understand that. That's me. So the book talks about 5 different steps when there is that rub, when there is a sticking point. And I'm gonna walk through these a little bit. So number 1, acknowledge the preferences, appreciate the why, flex in the right areas, leverage strengths of all generations, and resolve to come up with a plan that works. So I'm going to talk about all these individually. Okay. All right, so acknowledge exactly what it sounds like. Bring differences out into the open, emphasize a common need among generations, and stop the knee-jerk reactions, assumptions, and win-lose dynamics. So we talk about, for example, bring differences out in the open. Differences toward meetings. Should it be in person? Should it be on Teams? Should it be a 5-minute meeting? Where are there time for updates? All these different opinions of how a meeting should go. So acknowledge that there are a lot of different opinions and there are different generations in the room. But not stop the knee-jerk reactions is like, you can't pay attention, or because you're on your computer, you're being disrespectful. Or because you insist on asking more questions, you just want to slow down the meeting. You know, sometimes it's a clarifying, or no, this is how I learn about my colleagues and I care about them. So I want to know what they're working on. So there's different opinions. So it's stop the knee-jerk reactions, the assumptions, and the win-lose dynamics. Easy enough. So number 2, appreciate. Focus on the why. And so the book, I didn't go much into it, but the book really talks about the history of all these generations and what they are bringing to the table. It talks about how they grew up, talks about the influence of like TV and radio, print media, all these different things and how stories are told. So you go from news radio to news on the TV to news now in 30-second snaps and on social media. Talks about dating and how dating happened over time, and how some of these generations now, most of their dating is through like text message or social media. It didn't turn out, it's very different than other generations. So I highly recommend exploring the book. But why are we the way we are? The what's divide. So the fact that we have 2 different opinions, that will divide us. But we talk about why, where we come from, why that matters. Who we are will unite us. And it redirects the conversation with, you have a different opinion, so I need to fix it. I have to somehow win you over and fix your thought process so that you think like me. It talks about, until the why is understood, people will remain irritated. So it's like, why do you do the things you do? So thinking about those kind of things and learning to appreciate where someone comes from and learning their story. And this is, it talks about flex, and I always add the flexible. I love this, and this is always my favorite questions in the whole book. And I think it's really, when we do these presentations, people will start thinking, oh, okay. When do things have to be done a certain way? When is a great time for options? And these other two questions. What policies or procedures are based on departmental necessity? And what comes down to just generational preference? So you have these sticking points. And it's like, we need to really start thinking about this decision. Meetings, dress code, work ethic, all these different opinions on how things should go. And you really start looking at it, it's like, is this the way it is because I'm in charge and I made it that way? And that's just my generational preference. Or is this come down to the departmental necessity? We have to have things a certain way. This has to land, this decision has to be this way because of students, because of fiscal restraints, because of leadership, because of all these different things. So really start analyzing that. And so they're like, okay, where can I be flexible? Where is there a give that meets everybody's needs? So hopefully we have some time.
10 minutes.
10 minutes, sorry, we're good. Does anybody have any thoughts on where there may be some flexibility, or maybe they're like, oh, I hadn't thought about departmental necessity versus generational preference? Might be too big of a question for on the spot.
I like these questions. I appreciate thinking about it in that way. I know for us, we talked about in our, like, for me, the dress code, like, talked in our office about, like, people are wearing like bobcat gear and it's on Friday. In my head, I'm like, it's not Friday, it's Friday. And I let that go. Because that is a generational preference, not a necessity for the department or.
I think there's also a lot to be said of how were things when you first started working as a professional. So there are a lot of things that I throw back to my first probably 3 or 4 years as a professional. I was like learning the ways of the institution. So to me, I'm like, that's how it is. And I'm like, actually, that was just like 15 years ago. And that was based on someone else's generational preferences. So then I'm like, this is how I was raised. This is how I was raised to be a professional, to work in a university. But things are different. So I challenge you to like think about these two questions when you go back to your teams or your department. Finally, there's some leverage. So this is where that flexibility really comes in handy and you maximize. You maximize strengths of generation. So where one generation may be really good in one specific area, others may need that. And so learning how to work together, make the puzzle pieces fit. So seeing things as contributions rather than just differences. And learning to cooperate. I'm going to skip some of these questions for sake of time. But some of the things, when did your team department utilize talents in multiple generations? We do that in Housing and Residence Life because some of us are like not great with all the social media things. So we hire students because that's their language. You know, so there's different attitudes. That's an easy example, but start thinking about what do other generations bring to the table? What are the things that kind of bug me that actually could be turned into a strength? And then finally, resolve. So sometimes you can't just cooperate. Sometimes there actually has to be a way to do things. There has to be winning. We want to say sometimes you can't have 15 different opinions about dress code and everybody can just do whatever they want. Or sometimes you can have 15 different meetings about opinions or about meetings because it's not efficient. We need everybody on the same page. And so resolve is sometimes the best option is out. So sometimes that's the leader. Sometimes it's, you know, based on what needs to happen and that's how you decide. But resolve is when flexing isn't enough, you determine which option will yield the best results. Because it's not saying kumbaya, everyone's strengths are celebrated. It's all about cooperation. That's great 99% of the time, but 1% of the time it doesn't work out. And so today's resolution is tomorrow's sticking point. So whatever decision you have today, it may be years down the road where it's like, actually, now that's in a row again, because generations have changed, attitudes have changed. So we kind of blaze through this a little bit. This is actually my last slide. So again, when have you turned a personal preference into a business necessity just because you're the person that's in charge? And you get to dictate how you want things to go. And sometimes what's like leaders, like the heavy is the head that wears the crown, you get to be the person. But how are you creeping someone else's style because you just wanted things the way you want them to go? That's your preference. So personal preference to a business necessity. How does this knowledge impact the work with colleagues? And what will you do differently because of what you learned today? So is there anything you're taking back with you that's maybe been a rub or a sticking point that you're like, maybe we've already talked about this at work. Maybe we talk about this as a team. Does things really have to be the way they are? Is there a way for some cooperation? Is there an opportunity for some flexibility? Or sometimes like, no, this is how it has to be, and that's okay. Now, really fast. Oops. Thank you slide, but here it is. So again, that's the book. I think you can actually get it out of our library. It's called Sticking Points. Again, it's by Hayden Shaw. Super easy. I don't even think it's that much on Amazon. He should hire me to sell this book. But anyway, any questions for me? Yeah, I see a question in the back.
Sure. So thank you for your presentation. It was very enlightening. I'm aware of the book. And so one of the things that I wish the book would also address is international faculty, staff, and students.
Right.
Because the generational classification is a uniquely American construct and doesn't necessarily work for people coming from other areas.
Yeah.
So that's one. Two, I did, it's called the Intercultural Conflict Style Training. $16 to do it, but I wanted to do it to see what my style is because you speak so much about resolve, and a big part of that would be everyone on your team understanding their conflict resolution style.
Mm.
And although I've lived in the United States for almost 20 years, my conflict resolution style is still deeply rooted in the Caribbean and South American region style of how we, and then there are other styles where even if you have a meeting and you're asking certain people from certain parts of the world, should we be on Teams? Should we be in person? They're not going to answer.
Right.
Because they don't want to offend the leader, because the leadership structure is really rigid. And how do we deal with some of that? One plug on Generation P, that is the generation that was in high school during the pandemic. They're coming into college right now. One of the big things that the research is talking about that they need a lot of help with is their social skills. Going feedback from what Kathy was saying regarding some reservations she has when people are multitasking during a meeting.
Mm-hmm.
So we had a training that Kim Rouse organized the other day on ADHD and autism. Mm-hmm. One of the things the trainer talked about is, and I didn't realize that 1 in 5 Americans is considered neurodivergent. And that is 15 to 20% of the population, but only 8% of people have identified that. The majority of people are neurodivergent. They have not identified it in the workplace because they fear retaliation. 2 other strategies she said, particularly for people with ADHD, is in order to focus in a meeting, they may need to be in a computer. If the light is too bright in the room, they may need to wear sunglasses, or they may need to fidget with a tool. And so how do we kind of, I know that was loud. How do we kind of put that all together, considering all these nuances in terms of the resolve across the generation? Because I think we have to take all of these things into consideration before we can even get to resolve.
Right. I don't know. But you bring up a good point, and like I should have made this point earlier. This book, it's really helpful, but it is very Eurocentric, very American, the American generations. And so, of course, that doesn't reflect all the diversity and all the unique things that people bring to the table. So this just takes like one facet of who someone is. I'm a millennial, but I'm also lots of other things. And talked about, intercultural departments and things like that. And people, so they may be technically a boomer or born or a Gen X because they were born in the 80s, but there's like a slew of other things that are influencing that. And so I think that's another thing to take into consideration is like, this is just one lens of looking at differences in the workplace or differences among students, but people are multifaceted, tons of activities. I wish I had answers to your question. I don't.
Good questions.
Yeah, but good questions.
2 minutes, which might be just enough time for me to announce what's next unless there's a burning question.
No, but if I could make a suggestion,
Sure.
there are all these fun sites on social media, particularly on TikTok, on Facebook, and TikTok and Instagram, where the different generations have stuff. The way millennials refer to their dog versus the way Gen X refer to their dog.
Right.
The way millennials see work, like
Mhm.
PTO is a big thing.
Yeah.
And they're fun, but very informative, but without the sting of reprimanding you. So maybe some of those fun ones are good ways to kind of check.
Okay, there's several TikTok channels that I follow that are pretty funny, like, and they kind of poke fun, but it's also, you're like, yeah, it's kind of true.
Well, before we thank Jillian, I wanted to remind everybody of the evaluations that are on the website. You got an email reminding about the conference. There's a link directly to the conference website. That's where the conference feedback is. So if you could be going out throughout the day to put your feedback in, that's great. Assessment's really important to us, and we want to figure out how we can improve and what else we need to learn about. So, and then with that, I would just want to say thanks for the great presentation and your patience with the technology. So thanks to Jillian. And we have 15 minutes until the next session starts at 11.